Welcome to the Choose FI Radio podcast. We view the concept of financial independence as a life optimization strategy that helps you crush the game using a mixture of conventional and unconventional methods. My name is Jonathan Mendonza, a pharmacist pursuing financial independence, and my co-host name is Brad Barrett, a CPA turned entrepreneur who reached financial independence through diligent savings and online business ventures. We host a twice-a-week show on Mondays and Fridays that focuses on living below your means, creating multiple income streams, straightforward investment strategies, tax optimization hacks, and travel rewards. This is what winning looks like. Welcome to the show.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. Today we're going to be interviewing Jamila Souffrant, who actually has a podcast over at Journey to Launch. I mentioned this because we actually were on her show several months ago, and on that particular episode, we walked through the pillars of FI, and Brad and I have talked about this offline many times, that we felt we actually did a better job going through the pillars of FI on her show than we did on ours. But today we're going to get to reciprocate. She's coming on the Choose FI podcast to share her story. And it's a fascinating story. First generation here in the States from Jamaica. While she had the common sense aspect where she didn't get heavily into debt, there wasn't really any financial literacy there. There wasn't really any direction for what to do with her income. Got into this grazing lifestyle. But somewhere along the way, a fire was lit underneath her. She has a full-time job, full-time mom, and part-time podcaster. And her husband documented their journey of saving $85,000 in 12 months in the high cost of living area of New York City. And this is just going to be a fascinating story. And to help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing well, Jonathan. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this episode for sure. Like you said, we probably had our single best podcast out of hundreds on Jamila's Journey to Launch podcast. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful episode. And we refer people to that one now, which is kind of funny. And yeah, I mean, more importantly, for this particular episode, she has an amazing story. And I'm just so curious to learn how she did shift her savings mindset. And I'm so curious to learn how her and her husband and her family saved so significantly after, like you said, not having a purpose prior to that. They saved $85,000 in 2016, and their goal was to save even more, close to six figures in 2017. So it's a fascinating story. And with that, Jamila, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Jamila, this is an episode that I have been just itching to dig into because your story is just incredibly fascinating, and your experiences really from day one to where you are now covers a breadth of information that we just haven't seen up to this point. And I was listening to your podcast, and I know in your very first episode, you actually said that you immigrated from Jamaica, right?
Right. So I actually came here when I was 2 years old. So just to step back a little bit. So my mom, single mom, had me at 20 years old in Jamaica. So I was born in Jamaica. She came up here before I did. So she came to the States, and she actually had to leave me as a baby just to try to settle herself in the United States first before she was able to kind of send for me and my grandmother. So, which I can imagine. I mean, I can't imagine doing that as a mom now to provide a better life, but I can't imagine how hard that was for her to leave me behind and do that. And so she sent for me about, I would say, a year after she left. So I was 2 by the time I came to the United States, and I came to New York to, reunite with my mom. Again, by then, we came here with literally nothing. The good thing about it is we did have family here. And so we did stay with family while we got on our feet. And my mom, being still very young, 22 by the time we were up here together now, was working multiple jobs, trying to get an education. And my grandmother, who also came up here, was working hard to just provide for us.
So coming to the United States and growing up essentially first generation, having to essentially create your own network, I don't think anybody that's been on the show up to this point has had to deal with that particular set of experiences. And I'd love to just hear your take just from maybe challenges and opportunities that were availed or not availed to you coming from that background.
Yeah. So I describe this as really like, this is what developed my, I would say, character and grit, because I saw my mom working very hard, multiple jobs, lower wage jobs, going to school. So in that time, she was working. She worked at fast food restaurants. She did as much as she could, but she still went to school. So she got her education when she came here. And then she eventually went on to get her master's degree. But I witnessed that. And so we didn't have a lot of monetary things growing up and money. And the same thing with my grandmother. So usually if you come here as an immigrant, especially from the Caribbean, and as an older woman, you typically, what you end up doing is you clean homes or you watch children. So my grandmother ended up watching children in the city for, wealthy or really upper class people. What she saw was in those households, in those families, that the parents like read to their kids every night, or my grandmother would be asked to read to them every night. Things that typically like in our community, I didn't see, right? So my mom, I'm just so grateful for her because she heard those stories that my grandmother told, like, this is what the people that I'm working for are doing for their kids. She would actually take that as an opportunity to pass on to me. So while we couldn't necessarily afford like a lot of books, she would take me to the library a lot growing up when she had time. Every Sunday, we'd go to the library, take out books. That was just part of our ritual. And so I saw like the hard work. I saw that we didn't need to have money necessarily to have fun. And it really instilled a really good work ethic in me, which I still carry to this day. And because of that, because I appreciated so much how hard my grandmother worked, how hard my mother worked, it's really something that like I strive to do because I knew that they sacrificed a lot to provide me better opportunities. So it's one of those things where if they came here and they were able to, my mom was able to get her undergraduate degree. Eventually she got her master's degree. My grandmother, not knowing really anything, eventually was able to buy a home, which just really got me on the start of real estate investing, which I kind of did a little bit in my early 20s. Those moves by people who really had nothing and were able to do that, for me, just said to myself, hey, you came here with way more opportunities. You have such a better starting point. So you should be able to do so much more. And that's basically what's been driving me forward this whole time.
Jamila, that's incredible. I mean, to see that work ethic on a daily basis by both your mom and your grandma, that has to be so impactful. And then to see them pursue education, to have this concept of, oh, these people who I see are reading to their kids. So that's something we need to do. Like those are just such brilliant lessons. And I'm curious, was money talked about in the home on any level, like in your house? Or was it just that you saw your mom and your grandma hustling so hard to earn money? Well, like, did they ever sit you down and talk about it, I guess?
No. So money was not a conversation in our home. I was never taught the basics of personal finance. I literally just saw them. And especially my mom, she was the real person that I looked up to. I just saw how hard she worked. So I realized the value of money. And so from a very young age, I would always say to myself, I want to become rich. I want to become wealthy. That was always my thing because I saw how much opportunities money provided. I would see. So sometimes my grandmother would take me to work with her and I saw the types of homes. I saw the types of things that these other kids with more opportunities and privilege were doing versus what I had. And I said to myself, like, one day I want to be able to do that or provide that for my kids. Was
there anything specific about I want to be rich someday? Like, was there a number? Was there some aspiration other than just, hey, looking at these people and this will provide me opportunity?
It was just, I was young at the time. I have such a better understanding of what wealthy means now. And my whole idea of what wealthy is obviously has changed, especially since finding financial independence. But I really just wanted to have enough money. That's really what it all was. And, so again, I credit my mother because she also, so despite not having much, she did as much as she could do. And she put a lot of value on experiences. So I was able, as she got more on her feet, as she got better jobs and increased her income, she was able to do things like put me in gymnastics class. She was able to do things like put me in swimming. So I was able to almost get glimpses of like, there's a different life. There's a different type of life out there that could be mine. I just would have to basically work hard for it and make it happen.
And yeah, I saw on your 10 interesting things post, which I love, by the way, that you were a really high level gymnast, right?
Well, okay. So it's not really high level.
Well, but to me, it sounds pretty darn impressive.
Well, I wasn't the Olympic level gymnast, but I thought I was okay. I was pretty good.
And so one thing you said a minute ago, it just teed me up for a question. You said, I know what wealthy means to me now. And I'm curious, nobody's ever really described what that means to them. And, I suspect your financial independence background will certainly impact your answer. But I'm curious to hear, what is your definition of wealthy now?
So really, when I was growing up, I thought that I had to become a CEO of a company or create the next biggest idea. I thought I had to create a business in order to become wealthy. And I really didn't have like number. I would say I wanted to be a millionaire. I would just say random numbers because I didn't understand at that point what money meant, what wealth meant. Now having such a better understanding of it. And also, so I'm 35 right now. And so in my 20s, I've tried other businesses. I've tried to launch certain things and they never really panned out the way I wanted to. So from that moment, just from some of the fails, I call it failing forward, I realized that it's not about necessarily creating the biggest business or creating the next Facebook or Google or trying to, break the mold. For me, what wealthy means is just being in control of my time. And at this point, it's not about necessarily becoming a millionaire. Obviously, that would be the byproduct when I continue on this path. It's really about having the opportunity to spend the time I want, the way I want, with my husband, with my kids, doing something I love and not worrying about a paycheck or getting paid by someone else.
I just have to capture that single line that you said. It's incredibly powerful. Failing forward. It implies the progress that's being made, even on the back of things that maybe just didn't look like they worked at face value. It's an incredibly powerful concept. I'd love to hear a little bit more about this transition from being a dependent to maybe now you're branching out on your own, you're going to college. Like, how did that transition go? Could you talk to us a little bit about the college experience?
Sure. So I got my first job. So to step back a little bit, I got my first job at 14 and I've been working ever since. So 14, I was like doing like random jobs here and there. And then my first real job was actually in college because I was fortunate enough to get an internship through a program called Inroads. So they place minorities into Fortune 500 companies. And so because I applied for it my freshman year, I had great grades and I was determined to get into this program because one, it was just a great stepping stone into the business world. So in college, when I went, I just said to myself, I'm going to major in business because I know that I want to make a lot of money. That was really my motivation. And so I knew that getting into a program like Inroads where I can get a paying internship would be very key to do that. So I got in my first year. So from my freshman summer year, I got in and I got an internship. And I actually interned at that same company throughout my whole college career. I would work in the summers and I'd work every break. And I was getting paid a decent amount of money for a college student. And I would literally save about 90% of my check from those internships. And I was able to leave now this internship with a lot of money saved up.
Wow, 90% savings rate. That's incredible. I'm tempted to just continue to find out more, but I want to slow down and focus on this. We're on the show, we're all about actionable tips and how someone can start to implement something that someone else has done and documented. They can then benefit from your experience. And I guarantee you, there is somebody listening to this right now that says, wait, what is that? This is the first time I've heard about that. And I know someone that could benefit from the Inroads scholarship. Is there any advice that you can give to someone that says, I have someone in mind for this, they need to hear this podcast? What actionable tips would you give to somebody?
Right. So I believe that the Inroads program is still around. I'm sure it is. It's a little harder, obviously, to get into now that it's a more established program. But really, the key is getting in early because what I realized was because I applied my freshman year and I was serious about my grades. Now, I wasn't like the best A+ student, but, I was a pretty good student. And so for me, just having that leverage of good grades plus my background. So this was really important. So Inroads places minority students into these Fortune 500 companies, which is really important. So it helps, more people of color get into these industries. And so I would say to anyone, if you have kids in college or if you are in college, to look around for these programs because they're out there and they are meant to be used. They are meant to be applied for. They really are helpful, especially the paying ones. And a lot of internships, if you get them in these corporate jobs, they will pay. And if you're able to save most of your money or half of your money or something, you can really make a head start when it comes to graduating with some money in the bank.
Is there anything else that someone can do to differentiate themselves on these sorts of applications other than grades? Let's say someone's a 3.5, GPA student. They have the background qualifications and they would qualify as a minority on this application. So is there anything else that you think that someone can do in those first couple of years to really set themselves up to stand out?
I'd say extracurricular activities. So showing that I was a gymnast and showing that I volunteered in the community helped a lot. Also, strong writing skills. So anytime there was an essay that described your background, described your life or your intention for wanting to come into this program, I've always told the story about how I came here and just the work that my mom did to provide for me. And so anything that you can pull out from your individual story that makes you unique, share that, because there are other people who either have been through that or who can be inspired by it, and you never know where it can take you.
I think that's absolutely something worth exploring. What is the story you tell yourself about yourself? And if you have something that you can verbalize, then there's no reason you can't write it down. So thank you. I just wanted to take a couple minutes and highlight that, but thank you for sharing your story with us. Now I'm curious, you saved 90% of your income. What the heck did you do with it?
Okay, remember, I was in college, so I didn't have that many expenses. So I had a scholarship, so that helped. I also took out loans, so some of that was paying for my college. But really, when I was working in this internship, I didn't have much to pay for other than my cell phone bill or just commuting expenses and food. I didn't go spend it on clothes and fancy things when I was in college. I was really, really, really intentional, even back then, with my money. And then I also worked throughout college. So when the semester started, I would actually work on campus in addition, which helped pay for more things throughout the school year.
And just to be clear, so you were placed with a Fortune 500 company through Inroads. And how many years did you stay with that company? Did you stay with them through college as well?
Yeah, so every summer, so starting from my rising freshman year, so 3 years I interned with this company. And then the magical thing about this was when I was in my junior summer year, so right before I went to become a senior, they offered me a full-time position, the same company. So by the time I entered into my senior year in college, I knew that I would have a full-time job upon graduation, which was really, really good. It really allowed me to just relax a little bit on my senior year and know that I'd have a starting salary and income to help me when I went into the real world.
That is the secret right there. We don't spend enough time talking about internships, and there's so many different ones. It's not just the Inroads internship program. There are many internship programs like this, but that principle of instead of having that one-off job interview where maybe someone is looking at you from a perspective of distrust, you're building that trust over 1 to 2 years and you're getting paid in the process if you pick the right scenario. I think we need to spend as a community that's crowdsourcing ideas, we really should be spending more time talking about how these internship programs actually work. Who are the gatekeepers for these different intern programs and where someone actually gets started with that? And I actually know I'd love to send this back to you, Brad, because I know that this is something that you benefited from directly, right?
Yeah, I did. I actually, similar to Jamila, I got my job offer before senior year started. And like she said, it made for a very stress-free senior year. That's for sure. I did an internship. So at that time, it was the big 5 accounting firms, and they recruited pretty significantly on campus at the University of Richmond. And it was very difficult to get these internships. But basically, once you got one, you were almost assured, unless you really screwed up that internship, you were almost assured of getting a full-time offer from one of the 5 biggest accounting firms in the world. So it was really a big deal to get the internship. And if memory serves, it definitely paid quite handsomely. So it was this really amazing thing. And I needed to prepare pretty significantly for that interview and for the entire internship process. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts or any tips on that as well.
Yeah. So what I also did during my internship was when I first got placed, I got placed in the IT division, which was great, but I knew that I didn't want to be in the IT world. I wanted to be where I thought the money was, which was investments. So for the first 2 years of my internship, it was in the IT department. And so it was great. I learned a lot, but I knew I wanted to be in the investments department in this company. And so I approached the intern manager and I said to her, can I get switched over to the investment side? And there was some pushback because, they said the IT division has been sponsoring you for 2 years. Typically you stay in this division. And I asked again and I said, listen, and they also said, this position is all the way out in New Jersey. It was I was working in the city at the time. So Jersey was further away. And I said, it doesn't matter. I'll be able to get there. And so they gave me a shot and I was able to interview and get a position in the investments department, which is where I knew I wanted to be and where I knew I wanted a job offer for when I was graduating. And so my last internship was in real estate investments. It was really where I wanted to be. And that was important. This is important to note because if I would have just stayed and not to control or ask the question, I might not have been in the position to be earning as much as I am now because I would have been in a totally different field.
Yeah, and that's fascinating because that's a direct relationship to my own life. Is Jonathan and I kind of joke sometimes that I don't know how I ended up in the tax world. And, I'm a CPA, but there are many different options you can do as a CPA. And it literally came from that internship junior year. I kid you not. We had options to pick either tax or audit. And I split my applications. I did like 3 audit, 2 tax, and I just happened to like the firm that I ended up with. And that was one that I checked the box for tax. And there was literally no thought behind it other than just, I'm going to do 3 of this and 2 of that. And I wound up at this one firm and I was a tax accountant for the next 15 years. So Jamila, your thought process was brilliant and you put some real thought into it. And I would implore everyone out there to take that to heart because these internships really do matter. And I did it the idiotic way, frankly, and I paid for it for years in a job that I didn't really love all that much. So you never know when some of these decisions will impact you later in life. So take them seriously is really my best advice.
And Jamila, one of the things that really stands out to me is just that you take action on stuff. And you kind of led with this or previewed it earlier and mentioned that you had made some moves in the real estate space. So you've come through college, you're graduating college, you have your first job. Does real estate become a significant part of your financial plan?
It definitely does. The motivation to get into real estate investments corporate wise was that I really had an affinity for real estate. And that was because my grandmother, who knew nothing about real estate, who really just wanted a home of her own, managed to eventually buy a home in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. And at the time when she bought it, it was not a desirable location to live. But by the time that I was in college and, I would come home almost every weekend because I went to college in Long Island, I saw the transformation in Brooklyn. Before we even knew it, her little property that she bought for, I believe it might have been $200,000 or $300,000 was worth over $1 million because of the location of where it was. And this lady, again, could care less about property appreciation or just real estate. She just wanted a place to live. And when I saw that, I said to myself, this is what I want to do. I want to get into real estate, whether it's personal or corporate or whatever it is. I knew real estate was something that I had a passion for. And that kind of started my whole journey to trying to buy my first property. But unfortunately, when I was looking to buy in the area, everything was crazy. It was the time of the real estate boom, and I really couldn't afford any of the brownstones that I wanted to buy. Luckily, I looked up on an advertisement for a new development, so pre-construction development in Dumbo, Brooklyn. So that stands for down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass. So this was before Dumbo was Dumbo today. Now Dumbo today is the most expensive place to buy real estate in New York, but back then it was really unknown. I mean, I grew up maybe 5 minutes for the most part from that area, from where my grandmother had her house, and I probably never was in that area before. So that tells you just how much it's changed over the years. So I went with my mom to this sales office talking about, you can buy, some condos in this pre-development structure. And literally the only thing that I could possibly afford in this pre-development structure was a studio apartment. Even though it was expensive still, it was not as much as these brownstones that were selling for $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. And as a senior in college graduating, I couldn't afford that. But I said, maybe I can afford something for $300,000. That's really what hooked me. And I saw the plans for the area and the plans for the development. And I said to myself, I'm going to buy something. And so if it has to be a studio apartment, I'm going to do that. So graduation year, I was able to put down on this apartment. And it's been the best investment decision I've made to date in my life because it took 2 years to build. So I put 10% down to secure the apartment. I knew that I would be working. I'd be working and saving money. And luckily, my mom she was all for letting me stay at home while I worked full time and let me save my money. And so while the condo was being built, I knew that I had another 2 years to save up the additional 10% to be able to close. At the time, I didn't really have much. I put down my 10%. I knew I was working to save for the rest of the 10% in closing costs, but everything worked out because I was working on my job. So this job that now I was working full time, that was from my internship. I was making decent money, was able to save it, and was able to close on this condo. And luckily for me, by the time I closed, this condo appreciated in value. So I still own the condo now, even though I moved out and it's rented out. But since then, it's doubled in value. So it's been the best investment decision, the best risk I've ever taken. And really I'm just so happy that I went forward and I took a chance on that.
I think all of us love appreciation stories, especially when it's an investment that we made personally. But I think for me, what I want to highlight is you graduated from college with close to $30,000. Am I understanding that correctly?
About, yeah.
That's incredible. What an edge. Honestly, I think if we could get, when we're talking about second generation FIRE, if we can help our kids figure out how to start life with $30K in the bank instead of $60K in the hole in student loan debt, that is a life transforming superpower right there, that everything gets easier, right?
Mm-hmm. And I will note that my mom, despite not having much, despite she was still working hard, she even still gifted me towards the down payment. And that gesture, just everything she's done for me sticks with me because, again, I have kids now and I know what the kind of life, the kind of things I want to help them do. And when I see that, even though she didn't have much, she wanted to still be a part of this and help me do something, and that she reached into her bank or her savings and was able to help was so amazing.
So Jamila, I mean, one would be tempted to think that based on all the moves that you're making right now, your path is basically set. You're done. But I know for a fact this is not really where your story begins. It begins in your early 30s. So there's an 8-year space here. And I'm just wondering what happened.
Okay. So what happened was I was gung-ho about becoming rich. And I've always said this about myself. I would never work for anyone past 30. I was going to create a business or come up with an idea. And as I mentioned before, I tried a couple things. And they never really panned out the way I wanted to. And it was a little frustrating. And so what happened was I kind of just sunk into this idea of, you know what? Maybe I do need to work for the rest of my life. So this goal or dream of not working past 30 for anyone and, just being free from the cubicle and all these things, maybe that's not realistic. So I kind of just got used to this idea of, listen, it looks like everyone around you is happy with just staying in their job, increasing their income and spending as they want. So why do you want something different? As I would say, for a majority of my 20s, I started to sleepwalk through life and my finances. I wasn't that intentional. Now, again, I never did anything crazy. I was still a good saver and I still did things to help me move forward, but I definitely was not intentional. And it really wasn't until my early 30s, until I was pregnant with my first son, that I realized that, you know what, this lifestyle of going to work, doing something that I'm not completely in love with is not for me. I have to figure a way out.
So hearing you talk there, you said you were a good saver, I think is what you said throughout that time. But was it just that you didn't have a plan, or was it you also succumbed to lifestyle creep and weren't really saving all that much, but maybe more than people around you? I'm just a little curious, just for some clarification, if you don't mind.
Sure. So meaning I was not intentional about my money. So while I would save because I thought I wanted to buy another real estate property, I wasn't thinking about long-term wealth. I wasn't thinking about, hey, if you put as much money into your retirement accounts and investment accounts, you can have this by X amount of date. I had no clue any of that was possible. Frankly, I didn't care. I was more concerned about the today. What could Jamila do with her money today? I wasn't thinking about the long-term growth that I could see through investing. And that didn't happen until I found out about the FI community.
It's always struck me at a very personal level that until you see the math, you're slapped in the face with it, and you see that there are other people that are making a different choice, it's so easy to graze or sleepwalk, like you said, through life. And you just almost feel like, well, nothing I do really is going to move the needle anyways. No change that I make in my day-to-day activities is going to have any sort of effect on my financial path. And so instead of trying, you just tend to not do anything because it hurts to stand on the scale after Thanksgiving, right?
Mm-hmm. And because I was trying, I tried a couple businesses, they didn't work. And I didn't understand that there was another way to build wealth. I didn't realize that. So when things didn't work out, I would say to myself, well, okay, I guess you do need to work forever, because how else are you going to become wealthy or be in a position to not have to work for someone else? I didn't understand how it was possible without becoming wealthy through the lotto or starting a big business.
Can I ask you a question about that? So you're not afraid of entrepreneurship, and you're not afraid to try something. You're not afraid to try something new. And we see examples of this over and over again, but we've kind of glossed past what that failed business actually was. Tell us about it. What did you actually start?
So the first thing I started was a online magazine, and I actually started that in college with my best friend, and we did that for a couple years after graduation. But it didn't go anywhere. It didn't make much money. It didn't make any money, actually. And it was something that became a chore. So, on top of my job that I wasn't in love with, I had this side hustle that I wasn't in love with, and we really decided that it wasn't worth keeping it up. But it really taught me a lot. It taught me this was the first time that I was doing something I didn't have to do, right? It was the first time I was coming home from work, working extra hours, doing something additionally with the hopes that it would become something. And so I really think it helped to create this foundational entrepreneurial life that I live now.
So I'm curious about the genesis of this online magazine. I know, like for me, hearing your story, it's very similar to mine in that I started up a bunch of online businesses. They failed, but like you said, it kind of failed forward. And I learned all these things. And for me, the genesis was reading Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. And I just had this aha moment. I'm like, wow, that is what I'd love to do with my life. And I'm curious, did you have any moment, like what made you start that with your friend? What makes you start an online magazine?
We really just wanted to have a voice, a platform for women of color. So the magazine was for women of color, a lifestyle magazine, because there was a lack of it in the market. And so we saw it as an opportunity to come in, provide some value, some entertainment, and just a voice. And also thought of it as a way, well, hey, this can possibly make money.
Yeah, it goes to that, Brad. I didn't even think about to all those failed businesses that you had. But Jamila, as you're saying this, I'm thinking to myself, this is you in your early 20s and it didn't work. And you failed forward in that you had this entrepreneurial bent, but it was almost like by that not working, instead of you picking up the mantle and trying something else, it seems like you kind of took it as an excuse. Oh, I'm never going to be the millionaire or the billionaire, so I'm going to just go back to being an employee. And since I can't affect any change in my life, paycheck to paycheck is just fine. And I'm doing a little bit better than my peers because I'm not in debt, but I don't need to do better than that. Is that an accurate summary of 8 years of your life?
Yeah, so I would say almost, right? So I did start or try to start another business, which also was an epic fail, but a good failure at that. I tried to get into the vending machine business and that didn't work. But here's what. So I think it's interesting that you note that because I thought I was doing so well, I thought, okay, well, you're doing okay. You're doing better than most. I was living in Dumbo at the time. I remember I bought a fancy car, which was crazy because I would not do that now. So I was living this lifestyle of, okay, I have a good job. I live in a really nice apartment. I'm driving this really nice car. So maybe this is it. You should be happy with this. But at the end of the day, I wasn't. So even again, after I started this now vending machine business that didn't work out, I said to myself, okay, there's probably something else out there, but you can't figure it out or you have not figured it out yet. So yes, go back to the life that everyone else lives that they're happy with and just continue on. And that's kind of what I sank back into once I realized that, hey, nothing seems to be working out for me right now.
It's interesting you mentioned the car because I know that was a source of a light bulb moment for you at the end of a very long commute. And I'd love to hear that story.
So, it was ridiculous in terms of buying this car because I still had this long commute, which I have now today. And it takes about an hour and a half now on a good day, one way. It's totally not mustachian. I know it's pretty crazy, but I bought this car and it was, because it required premium gas, the gas on it cost more money, but this was before kids. This was actually before I got married to my husband. And so I only had to worry about myself. I wasn't thinking in the long term and I was just appeasing, I would say, my ego at that point in my life. I wasn't thinking about anything else. And it really wasn't until I got pregnant. So I would say the genesis for a lot of my change was becoming a mom, because it gave me more purpose, and it just wasn't smart to try and put a car seat in the back of a coupe. So that changed right away.
Well, tell me specifically about that particular commute where you said this has to change.
Yeah. So I remember I was pregnant with my first son. And like I said, it typically takes me an hour and a half one way to get home driving, which I've come to accept begrudgingly. But this particular day, it took me, I would say 3.5 hours to get home, because it was a lot of traffic. This was like obviously not a normal day. This was like a crazy accident. And I remember being pregnant and coming home to my husband crying. Like I cried in the car. I cried when I got home. And at that point, we were actually living with his mom in his mom's basement. So this was another way where, if you talk about the little things that we did to save money and to be able to be where we are today, for a couple of years, we did live, like when I got married, moved out of the condo in Dumbo, moved into his parents' basement house, and we were living there for a couple of years. So I remember coming home into that basement, crying and saying to myself, I cannot do this with the baby. Like I cannot spend 4 hours on the road. Like this is ridiculous. That led me to seek out other ways in which to build wealth. So I said to myself, okay, maybe you can't think of the next big idea, the big business, but there must be another way. And so I stumbled into personal finance podcasts and personal finance blogs, which eventually then led me down this nice rabbit hole where I found FI, and that there were people who were making less money than I was making, or who were just optimizing their finances. They were able to retire in 10 years or before the standard age. And I said to myself, at the very minimum, I should be able to, or we should be able to work towards that. And that's kind of what started me on the path.
Jamila, there was a phrase on one of your blog articles that was describing this event that really stood out to me. And it was that your light bulb moment ended with you saying, I wasn't living my truth. And I'd love to hear you explore, like, what did that mean for you?
It meant that I was working and spending a lot of my time and energy doing something that I knew was not serving my soul. I was not happy. And I felt this. I felt this from the day I remember starting working full time, where like I sat in that cubicle and I said to myself, I don't want to be here. Like I looked at some of the older people and I said, I don't want to be here forever. And so that thought, that internal feeling was always there with me. But there was times where I pushed it down because I felt, why can't you be happy like everyone else? Everyone else seems to be happy, or even if they're not happy, they're making it work. What makes you so special that you think you deserve a better life, or that you can retire early? And especially because I didn't see that. There was no immediate people that I saw in my community or that would set that example for me that was even possible. So it's one of those things where you start to kind of think like, I have all these ideas, but maybe I'm just crazy. Like maybe I'm crazy for thinking them. And so through all this time, suppressing all that energy and these goals, by the time it hit that now, I'm pregnant and I'm realizing that I do not want to spend the rest of my life doing this. That's what I mean by not living my truth, because it was down deep inside of me. But for the reasons of me not feeling like I could accomplish it or not really achieve them, I pushed it down, and I really didn't feel like I was serving like my purpose here in the world.
So how do you find your purpose? I guess that's the question that so many people have. And I'm curious, like, did this come together with finding FI? Like, was that an awakening for you? Or like, talk us through how you found your purpose and how you decided to move forward.
Yeah. So because I started to listen to these podcasts and read these blogs, and I saw that people were doing this, I just followed what interested me. And so what always interested me was personal finance, or the ability to, save. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm enjoying all these stories and these lessons from other people. What if I created a platform in which I could share my journey? And so I didn't actually start like the blog or podcast until years later. But I started to just read more, listen more, and really just get a better sense of, wow, this is, when I listen to these things, this gives me hope. This makes me happy. And I started to realize that, I was the person that all my friends came to for personal finance advice or budgeting advice, because despite not necessarily always being intentional with my money, I was doing better than most of them in terms of saving. And so they would always come to me. So again, I pulled from, okay, what do people come to me most for? If someone were to ask what Jamila is good at, what would they say? And it was always that, she's very logical. She's very smart with her money. And so things like that really led me to believe that, okay, personal finance, or at least helping others in this space, is really something that you're good at and that you should explore.
So Jamila, one of the things I wanted to highlight is I just love that you're willing to continually just pick it back up and try again, fail forward over and over and over again, but you're learning lessons, you're getting closer to your truth. I think one of the things we'd like to explore is that you're on this rapid path to financial independence, and you've got this platform, Journey to Launch, which seems like it is the epitome of everything that you've been striving for. But I know at least at this point in time, it's not a big part of your FI plan currently. What's responsible to getting you where you are now is the ground game that you alluded to earlier. And this leads me back to something that is definitely worth highlighting. Once you decided to flip the switch and figure out how to implement all these ideas that you're getting from these different podcasts, you managed to somehow save $85,000 in 12 months in the high cost of living area of New York City. I'd love to hear you walk us through that.
Sure. Listening to these financial independence podcasts like Mad Fientist, or is it Mad Fientist? I always get it confused.
I'll take it both ways.
And Radical Personal Finance and all these things, I started to learn all these techniques and tactics that people were using. And so one of the things that we did was, so my husband's a teacher, and I realized that through listening to the Millionaire Educator on, I forgot which specific podcast he was on that I listened to, that he was able to save so much money by investing in a 457 and his 403b account. Then obviously realizing that I had a 401k account I could contribute to. So just to step back a little bit, I found out about FI, and I came home and told my husband about it. And I was like, listen, I can't do this commute forever. I don't want to live this way forever. What can we do to figure out a way in which we can be happy? So in the future, and be happy now. And so we came together. It wasn't overnight, but we created a plan together in order to save and invest more than we ever did before, because we weren't budgeting at that point. We weren't investing the max in either one of our pre-tax retirement accounts. And so finding out that we had all these avenues, that was like the first step. So figuring out, okay, what are we going to do differently? Which was 1, start budgeting. 2, let's just put all our money into these pre-tax retirement accounts. Let's max them out, and let's figure out what we do with the rest of the money. And that's why I love about the pre-tax stuff, because you really, it comes out before you see your check. And so really you're left with what you're left with to budget with. And that's kind of like how we thought of it. And so half of that $85,000 was literally all the pre-tax retirement accounts, maxing out that 403b, maxing out the 457, and then maxing out my 401k. And then we did the things like the backdoor Roth IRAs and investing in index funds to top everything else off.
And I believe you even managed somehow on top of that to pay down your primary mortgage as well, right?
Yeah, that was part of it. So we started that later on that year. Part of my initial FI plan when I started was that I wanted to do it by 40. And it involves actually me retiring early, quote unquote, but obviously not contributing to the household. Like my goal would be to still bring money in, but it wouldn't be through corporate America. It wouldn't be through a job I didn't love. It'd be through my own passions. My husband, on the other hand, he would still work, and he wants to work. He has a more flexible schedule. He's a teacher. And so the way it worked is that we would be so much better off and comfortable if we could get rid of this mortgage. And so what I wanted to happen was, throughout the years of us saving and investing aggressively, was to also be able to pay down the mortgage, so that way our overall expenses would decrease dramatically once I wasn't working, because I do bring home a good chunk of money into the household. So that was going to be really important for our plan, is to get rid of that mortgage.
But you basically went from, I don't know, maybe a 5, 10, or 15% savings rate and got it up close to 50% within your first year or so, just by coming up with a plan, finding out what your number was, maxing out all your pre-tax accounts, and cutting some items from your budget. I mean, in order to do that, if you were basically spending all that money before, you do have to make some sacrifices, right?
Yeah. So before this, we had our luxury cars. We got rid of them, bought our cars. So we got more economical cars. Budgeting was a big part of it. And again, I can't even tell you where the money actually went all those years before. I'm sure it went somewhere, but even when I look back at it, I'm just saying, wow, like if we started doing this years ago, we'd be so much further ahead. But really, it's about being intentional. And I love the fact, again, the pre-tax stuff makes it really easy, because we can only budget with what's left. And I will also note that we do take opportunities to make as much in terms of our income as possible. So while my husband is a teacher, he works multiple like extra things where he can make money. So he's a coach for multiple sports. He does morning school. He does summer school when he can. So he's also additionally trying to bring in as much money as possible. And then for me, because I work in a structure where I do get bonuses and I do get annual raises, I said, and I committed to myself, any bonuses, any annual raises will go towards investing, will go towards building our wealth, not towards anything frivolous or things that really didn't help us in the long term.
And I also wanted to point out that it sounds like you have a fairly significant combined income. So by maxing out all these pre-tax buckets, you're getting yourself out of a fairly significant marginal tax rate as well. So there's this real tangible benefit in the current year of a lowered taxable income and tax liability. So it definitely enables you to save more in the current year. So that's just for the audience, just to keep in mind. That's why we love these pre-tax buckets. You control what you can control and you max those things out and you save on tax liability in the current year when you know precisely what your marginal tax rate is. So that's a cool add-on benefit, certainly, of those pre-tax buckets. And Jamila, I'm curious. So $85,000 you saved approximately in 2016. The intention was to save more in 2017. I'm not sure what the exact number was. What's the plan going forward? So how many years do you intend to work? I know you said 40 is the goal theoretically, but like, is this all factored into the FI calculation? And what's your path from here on out?
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's changed. It's changed recently because so I have two small kids. I have at the moment 3.5-year-old, 1.5, and then I'm pregnant. So the real goal was to be able to create or reach this so that I can spend more time with them. But as I got deeper into FI, the journey, as I got deeper into Journey to Launch, so doing this business on the side, I started to realize that I couldn't keep this momentum up. So this momentum of having this long commute that I still have, going to work in a demanding job, coming home, taking care of kids, being pregnant currently, and then on top of that, running, as you guys know, a side business that literally is almost like a full-time business. So it's like I'm almost working 2 full-time jobs. I said to myself, I don't know that I can keep this up for another 5 years. So let's just say I keep on this path and I'm still trying to reach it at 40. I don't know that I could sustain this lifestyle of working so hard and having all these responsibilities and be happy. Like, I truly believe I'd burn out. And so I've recently decided that I need to either think of other ways in which I can reach FI, or at least think of ways to be happy in the now. And so our plan has kind of changed a bit, where instead of funneling all the money into the pre-tax stuff and to the investment stuff, we want to be able to create a hefty FU fund, as the FI community loves to say, because I want to be able to, if I need to, walk away from my job and take the time to do the things I love, which is Journey to Launch. And so I am actually just thinking more about that. We are planning to make that a possibility. It's interesting that when I first started this, it was all about saving and investing as much as I can. And now I'm at the point where I don't know that I can do this for another 5 years. And so I'm willing to take the risk, or I'm willing to take a break to follow my passions. And hopefully this will still lead me to FI. Hopefully following my passions will earn me money in which I can still start saving and investing again. But the priority at this moment is to save as much money in cash and into accessible accounts, in which if I need to walk away from my job, I could do that so I could follow this.
Wow, it's amazing how eerily similar your story is to Jonathan's own fully funded lifestyle change, right? That's
I was thinking that I'm parodying myself here. First of all, for people on the outside of podcasting, it's a bear. It takes a ridiculous amount of time. And so when I preface this by saying that Jamila is a full-time employee, full-time mom, part-time podcaster, that last part's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because it's impossible to be a part-time podcaster. It takes up a lot of time. The blessing of it is that it is a passion, and so you're happy to do it. But when it's on top of all the other responsibilities, it can be somewhat overwhelming. It's amazing to me, though, Brad, the common thread is that when you are grounded in the FI community, it affords you the ability in a very short period of time to make the choice or the consideration, Jamila, that you're facing right now. You are increasingly every single month that you prioritize your savings, you increase your position of strength. And I wouldn't be shocked at all to hear that you make the same choice that I made, because I know what factors you're weighing. I have a son named Zach. I had a job that was taking all my time, and I have a podcast, and I know what choice I made and what it was based on and where I was operating from. And I'm 6 months after that now, and I have zero regrets about the choice I made. So I'll be following your journey with interest.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, my son's name is Zach too. So I think, it's eerily similar to what you did. And that when I heard your story, I was just like, yes, I love hearing that. I love hearing being able to responsibly take that leap, because, when you have kids, when you have a mortgage, when you have a lot more going on later on in life, it's not as easy to maybe just give up things and follow your passion. So you have to be a little smarter about it, which is why we're taking the time to build up this fund now so that, you know what, let's try this out. Let's see if it works. And you know what, let's take that leap.
All right, guys. Well, normally that would be the end of the episode, but on this show, Jamila, we would love to give you the chance to tackle the hot seat. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
In a world drowning in debt and rampant consumption, trapped by the chains of lifestyle inflation, these questions highlight the secrets of those who have broken free. Welcome to the Choose FI Hot Seat.
All right, Jamila, question number 1, your favorite blog that's not your own.
Favorite blog that's not my own. I'm not going to say the obvious answer that everyone says, even though I love I love their stuff. But I did come across a blog that I actually like. It's called richandregular.com. It's a couple from Atlanta, an African-American couple at that, reaching or trying to reach FI. And I just love their perspective. And they really go through how much they're saving and just where they're coming from perspective-wise. So I really related to that a lot.
Cool. And that's richandregular.com?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. We'll have that linked up in the show notes for sure. I've never heard of that before now, but I'm going to go check it out personally.
I love my reading assignments that are generated from this show. It's like my favorite series of questions. Let's pay it forward. Who have I not heard of yet that I can go just binge read everything they've ever written? It's literally my favorite part. All right, question number 2, your favorite article of all time. Now, this can be one that you wrote or somebody else's.
So I'm going to go with the one probably a lot of people say, but Mr. Money Mustache, any one of his blogs.
Oh, he is going to be so grateful for a backlink from us. That's perfect.
Like he needs one.
Yeah.
No, I mean, giving credit where credit is due, he was definitely one of the, in terms of blogs to read, other than podcasters, like he was definitely one that I started reading and really enjoyed.
Awesome. Absolutely. Now, was there one in particular? If you could only pick one article, do you have one in mind?
I believe the name of it was the 4% Rule.
The 4% rule. I think the entire tagline there is the 4% rule, the easy answer to how much I need for retirement. We'll link it up in the show notes, but it definitely is a quick summary on finding your number. All right, question number 3, Jamila, your favorite life hack.
My favorite life hack is finding out about the 457 plan. I mean, that's kind of like a nerdy life hack, but it really was because of being able to contribute to that initially to what we typically can contribute that was able to push us over the edge of how much we saved.
Yeah, that's a huge hack. And we talked about that in depth with Ed Mills from the Millionaire Educator. And that was episode 13. So you can reach that by going to the URL choosefi.com/013.
And if someone is in this position, I just want to add a little end cap on this. If someone is in the position of maybe one individual having a higher income and the other individual being a teacher and having, or a state employee and having access to the 457, that is like the secret sauce of the tax strategy inside the United States. I mean, you are positioned to crush the game like you can't even imagine. It really is. So if you're thinking, wow, I think someone mentioned one time that I might have access to that, go listen to episode 13 of this podcast. Truly, it is the fast track to FI that cannot be overstated.
All right, Jamila, question number 4, your biggest financial mistake.
Not investing more in my pre-tax retirement accounts and Roth IRAs in my 20s.
You can never get that time back. I think so many of us have the excuse that we're just trying to dig our way out of student loan debt. We just got to figure out that bridge. If you can get to that place, again, it comes back to if you can get to that place where you're graduating college without that weight of student loan debt on your back, then you're just positioned to be able to make these really optimized choices. Question number 5, the advice you would give your younger self.
Advice I'd give my younger self is to not lose hope or vision of your dreams, and that it might not unfold the way you thought it would or how quickly you would like it to, but it will unfold. So just have that faith. All
right, Jamila, we have one last bonus question. So in the FI community, we often talk about cutting expenses. And while certainly we don't focus on like a deprivation mindset, but we do talk about not spending, right? But that said, certain times purchases really add value to our lives. And I'm curious, what was the most impactful purchase you've made in the last year? We usually ask for Amazon.com, but really it could be from anywhere.
I would say my ATR 2100 mic that I'm recording on now that allows me to do my podcast. It's been the best investment decision I've made in myself in this last year.
Nice. I love that. I'm talking on an ATR 2100 as well. It's amazing in this day and age how little you need to create a real quality podcast. I mean, Jonathan makes fun of my laptop all the time. I've got like this junky $200 laptop that's a couple years old. I have this beautiful ATR 2100 that's really not that expensive, and Skype. And that's all it takes. It's amazing, right? What a world it is.
And you can have an impact on millions of people. I got to imagine that terrestrial radio is going away. It just is. People have smartphones with them, and they're listening to people that are having an impact on their life. And when we were going through your journey, we started this episode, we talked about the influencers that had the impact on you. And it wasn't someone on the radio. It was someone that you found on a podcast that you could carry with you and listen to on demand. And what's so poetic about this story is that you're having the same impact on your community. I know that for a fact. And they are now listening to you, at their convenience while they're doing something else. And they're just getting a little bit better in every single aspect of their life. And I know how much I have benefited from this platform, both as hopefully someone that's curating good information, but also listening to it. And there is nothing like podcasting. So Jamila, thank you so much for coming on the show. What is the best way for someone to find out more about what you're doing over at Journey to Launch and get in touch with you?
Sure. So I can be found at journeytolaunch.com. I also have a podcast, so you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, anywhere you tend to tune in. And of course, I'm on all social media as Journey to Launch. So just come find me. I love hearing from everyone and responding to messages.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Brad, what a powerful episode, what a powerful story, and what a powerful concept of failing forward. And what came through over and over again was that perseverance, that persistence, and just getting a little bit better. And that is the overwhelming optimism that we continue to highlight in the FI community. Jamila brought it, and her life demonstrates that.
This was an amazing story, and that's the essence of success. Your life isn't easy every day. It's not easy for any of us, but you have to lean into that discomfort. You have to lean into failure and pick lessons from it and move forward and fail forward. What a brilliant quote. I suspect we're going to use that for the rest of eternity here on Choose FI. This is the story to listen to. And Jamila's story is truly amazing. Coming from Jamaica, 2 years old, buying an apartment on her own at 22, and now on the path to FI well before 40. I mean, it's really, truly remarkable. So again, thank her for the time. Thank her for being here to tell this story to the audience. So really, really wonderful.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to the episode today. I hope you got value from the show, and I hope that you've been getting value from the episodes up to this point. I hope that they are making this journey that we're all on together just a little bit less lonely. And it's just a privilege to be a part of this community. If you want to support us and what we're doing here at Choose FI, here are 4 easy ways. 1, leave us an iTunes review. If you want to do that, just go to choosefi.com/iTunes. 2, use our page to sign up for travel credit cards. If you want to travel the world with miles and points instead of your hard-earned dollars, then just go to choosefi.com/cards and get started today. 3, if you're working on the milestones of FI, set up a personal capital account to track your progress and use our affiliate link. It's completely free, and just go to choosefi.com/PC. P as in Paul, C as in cat. And 4, and most importantly, find your friends, coworkers, and family members who might be open to this message and tell them about the podcast. Have them start with episode 38, The Why of FI, and right behind that, have them go listen to episode 21, The Pillars of FI. It is a fantastic starting place. All right, my friends, the fire is spreading. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.